So why does Trump hate so much? He is pretty blatant about it. He doesn't hide the fact that he holds a vast amount of hatred within his heart for a huge swathe of humanity, many, indeed most, of his fellow countrymen and women. Where does that come from? What's it all about? In this video, we're going to peel layer by layer into the different causes and sources of his hatred. What is going on inside him? What is the cauldron bubbling inside him that leads him to possess just so much hate? Trump regularly talks about how much he hates his opponents. This is extraordinary for a president of the United States. Recently, when he was asked, what are you going to do to bring the country together after Charlie Kirk's assassination, and he turned around and said, I couldn't care less about bringing the country together. He has expressed before that he doesn't dislike or just oppose or disagree with the Democrats. He actually actively, sincerely hates them. And that's literally his words that he's used. He even went to Charlie Kirk's funeral and directly contradicted Charlie Kirk, argued with the man who's now passed. He said Charlie Kirk said that it's important to love your enemies, to actually hold some place for your enemies in your heart. And Trump said, I disagree with that. In fact, he's very open about the fact that unlike Charlie Kirk, he hates his enemies.
In that private moment on his dying day, we find everything we need to know about who Charlie Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
So there's no part of Trump that wants to be president for all of the people. Like any other president, like every other president before him, being available for, being a service to, being there to serve all of America is not what he sees his job is, because he hates a huge amount of America. Now, it's actually not easy to hold that much hate for so many people. You know, think about yourself. Most people might really dislike a few people in their lives, and there may be one or two odd people who they hate. Hate is an emotion like love. It's reserved for a relatively small number of people, for most of us. We don't go around hating a huge amount of people, but Trump generally does. Now, the question arises, why is that? Why is this person so capable of such vast amounts of hate? Well, this, as all things psychological, goes back to his childhood. The first thing is, as I explained in a previous video, in which I talk about the way in which a lot of Trump's psychological makeup is actually quite similar to that of a toddler. There are aspects of a toddler psychology that Trump possesses. Well, certainly one of those that applies to his hatred is the way in which he sees the world in black and white. Toddlers tend to sort of segregate the world into good and bad, black and white. That's exactly how Trump sees the world. He's not really able to see nuance. People who are sort of halfway, people who are okay. You know, you can move from one to the other. You can be in your bad books and be hated, but then you can come across the other side and vice versa. But, you know, no one will ever sit in the middle. Anyone will either be loved or hated by Trump. And so, you know, that black and white thinking is a key part of that. And one of the reasons it happened is because he experienced a trauma in his childhood when his mother had to be away from him for a whole year when he was a toddler. It sort of froze his development at around that stage. So he has this black and white thinking that is a part of it. Now, at in adulthood, what happens to most people is that they have reparative relationships, they sort of change those things as you evolve and grow older. That didn't happen to Trump. Now, what tends to happen when people retain hate into adulthood is that something called projection is going on. That is that there are parts of yourself that you actually hate. There are facets of your own personality, of your own psychology, of your own sense of self that you actually hate. And what you do is, instead of owning up to those, instead of facing them within, instead you project them to the outside world and you hate those. Now, there's a reason why Trump has lots of parts of him that he hates, and that's because he had a father who would regularly disparage him, who would regularly belittle him, look down on him, judge him, and yes, pour scorn and even hatred on him and all of his siblings. So that's what Fred Trump did to all of his children. He would actually pour scorn and hatred on them on a regular basis. And so there are parts of Trump's own makeup that he hates in himself. That might be, the part of him, for example, that needs nurturing, that needs care, that actually wants people's affection. And he doesn't want to admit that in himself. So he projects it onto other people and says they're weak and he hates them. So there are parts of himself that he hates. He projects onto other people. And then that is an easy way to experience hatred for those parts of yourself, because he's actually sort of smeared them onto a whole section of the population and he hates them instead. Now, if we go a step deeper, who was it that he really hated in his childhood? You see, if his father is pouring scorn on him on a regular basis, judging and belittling him and his siblings on a regular basis, then yes, that creates a division in the psyche with part of you that you don't like. But also it means that he will start to develop genuine resentment and dislike and even hatred towards his parents and towards his father in particular. So there is a great deal of hatred actually that he possesses in there, and he would never have acknowledged that. He would have been too afraid to say it, to even feel it in himself. So what often happens in these situations, when there's real negative feeling towards the parent, which you cannot express because you'd be afraid to, that sits within you, and instead of simmering against that person, it then starts to get displaced around the world. So the hatred that he actually has for his father is displaced onto a whole series of people around him. So there's the black and white thinking, there's a projection of the thoughts around himself that he's projecting onto other people. And then there's the displacement of the hatred that he has for his father, that he's instead displacing onto all sorts of people around him. And then on top of that, what also happens to the young child, to the toddler, that is experiencing this disparagement and denigration and this fear at the hands of their parent, what happens is that as well as disowning parts of themselves and projecting outwards, as well as displacing the hatred they feel for that parent to other people, they also feel an existential fear, a genuine existential fear from all of the opprobrium, from all of the violence, even if it's just verbal, that's being poured upon them. And so all of that sense of existential fear lies deep inside. And as a result of that, Trump can look around the world and feel fear anywhere. He becomes hypervigilant. He feels that people who are against him are really physically against him, are a real threat to him. And that's why sort of controversies wherever they alight, whenever people write critical articles about him in newspapers, whenever journalists actually investigate him, whenever comedians make jokes about him, rather than taking it on the chin, rather than sort of seeing it as part of what happens if you're a politician and understanding everyone has their own agenda, instead of that, he actually feels an existential fear that comes about from that. Why? Because he had that existential fear as a child, as a result of the criticism he experienced from his father and the actual aggression he experienced from his father. So now that is now experienced whenever he experienced criticism. So this is why he's busy shutting down late night comedians. He's busy trying to bully newspapers and journalists into not writing anything negative about him. This happens to autocrats in general. Why? Because they have an existential fear within them of all criticism. So these are all the various different layers that lead Trump almost uniquely, certainly uniquely for American presidents, to possess that degree of hatred. There's part of himself that he projects to the whole world, and he hates the whole world, but really it's himself he's hating. There's part of his father that he displaces onto the whole world, and he hates all of these people, but really it's his father who deep down inside he hates. At least a part of him does. And also there's this existential fear that he possesses deep down inside him that makes him so afraid to accept any criticism. And so he starts hating people who even make mild comments against him, even make jokes about him. He hates them too. And that all sits within the framework of seeing the world in black and white. And he can easily do that when he has so many defense mechanisms operating around them. He can just cleave the world in two, between the people who he actually cares anything about, which is his MAGA supporters, and himself. Although, that itself is questionable in terms of the authenticity of that, but the people then who he explicitly hates and he talks openly about and doesn't deny, even though he's supposed to be president of all of them. And ultimately, as I say, it does make him unique as a president who doesn't love most of America, but truly, genuinely, deep down inside, hates it. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razak and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. All members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.